Welcome to Spectral Shadows. This is the place where the stories don't just haunt your mind, they follow you into the dark. Before the whispers begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it? Midnight? Or closer to the hour when shadows move on their own? If you're brave enough to continue, prove it. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows and leave a comment with your time and location, so we'll know exactly where to find you. Now, let's open the door to tonight's nightmare. Story number 1. Possession can take many forms. Thanks to Hollywood, humans have a pretty good grasp on the basics. It primarily involves a person, animal, or object. In many cases, it's easiest to possess whatever is near or the focal point of negativity. The abused and neglected child, desperate and vulnerable. The home that has housed decades of family trauma and violence, or the doll that is simply a witness to it all. For a demon, it's far more than just a chance to torment and drag an unlucky soul back into the fires. It's an opportunity, a chance to prove to all of hell what you can do, while also being able to escape it for as long as you can. The closest thing we have to a miracle. I'd introduce myself, but my name is unpronounceable by man, and I wouldn't even know where to begin with spelling it. To be honest, I haven't heard it in so long, I sometimes forget it. I am a lower-ranking demon only permitted in the less actiony sides of hell. I don't get to see to the torture of the damned or anything fun. I mainly herd souls and preform, the bidding of the higher ranks, subject to abuse and carrying out tasks no one wants to do, like making sure the rivers continue to flow and aren't being too clogged up from all the bodies stacking up and thrashing desperately in the current. Today, I've been tasked with breaking up large ice formations from relentless rains here in Beelzebub's territory, one of the most horrifically uncomfortable lords to speak with, but I stay on his good side by having an offering ready for every meet. He might not love what you have to offer, but he's not exactly picky either. I watch the damned roam aimlessly through the storm while I chip away at the ice, eyes frozen shut, with the fierce winds peeling back their frost-bitten flesh, exposing the blackening muscle and bone beneath. If the ice formations get too large, the humans will use them to try and escape the elements. Pointless, really. I chuckled to myself at their expense. I hacked away at the ice, revealing long abandoned fingers, limbs and strips of faces past souls weren't able to free from the structure's cold grip. That was when I saw it. A glimmering thread appeared from nowhere, just in front of me. These threads are doorways, so to speak, a bridge to something from the mortal plane that is essentially available for possession. Exceptionally rare, especially in these parts, and just within arm's reach. It was beautiful. Hey! I snapped my head around. Don't you fucking move, imp. I had stared for too long. I should have known higher-ranking demons would be alerted and drawn to its location. I froze, my whole body clenched and vibrating violently with fear and excitement of what could be. If I were to disobey, I can't imagine the suffering I would endure. Once I was through, though, who could reach me? My head felt heavy at the thought, but my eyes were forcing my focus on the thread. It's right here, right in front of me. The opportunity and escape I've yearned for centuries. I couldn't ignore this moment. I had to take the chance and finally become everything I knew I could be. I inhaled sharply and quickly grasped the thread, and with my last sight being the absolute rage of the demon rushing towards me, everything went dark. I felt light as I regained my consciousness, floating in a pool of blackness when I began to hear distant mumbling. It slowly grew louder, less muffled as I opened my eyes. It was bright and took a moment to focus. Where am I? I looked ahead at a man staring back at me with frustration in his eyes. Come on. He gave a short but forceful shove into me. Damn thing never works right. He stormed off. What the fuck was that about? I asked myself. I took a moment to focus and learn what I had become a part of. As the full picture of my possession came into view, my jaw dropped. No, fuck. It wasn't true. It couldn't be. My heart raced with confusion, panic, and sheer embarrassment as my situation became more and more clear to me. It was a coffee machine. I have possessed a goddamned coffee machine. After a few hours or so of trying to calm myself down, I was able to look around and listen to people coming and going, and have drawn the full unfortunate picture of my situation. I am now a large coffee machine in the break room of some machine company. Bearings, I think, is what I heard they make here. It's fine. This is fine, I thought. I'll just bail, return to hell and explain myself. They'll probably all laugh. But I knew this wouldn't be the case. To back out of a possession was considered dishonorable. Not that honor exists where I'm from, but it was looked at as failure or cowardice. Should I return, I'd be subject to tortures and humiliations far worse than what most humans receive. I was stuck here in the decision I've made. My thoughts were interrupted by another man staring at me, blankly deciding on what type of coffee he wanted. He pressed A3, and a lukewarm black coffee was dispensed. He took a sip, let out an unsatisfied sigh, and left. Maybe there's hope here, I thought. It's not what I had envisioned, but there is opportunity here. I just needed to think. These people drink from me. I can dictate what they ingest. I can have a direct effect on them internally. Not sure where it could go from there, but it's something. With this clarity, I've decided to stick it out and have gained a new excitement for what could be. The first work break of the day has started, and a few people sitting around at the lunch tables, rambling about their pathetic lives and what a shithole place they think this is. Finally, my first target has approached me. An older fat woman breathing heavily and biting her disgusting nails as she looked over her options. We really need more options in this whole thing. She chose E4, a cappuccino. Admittedly, I was caught off guard a little. I was so taken back by this putrid ogre, I hadn't even thought of a plan for the drink. Quickly, I allowed many small and sharp, hair-sized shards of plastic to peel from the dispenser into her coffee. In time, my strength will grow, but for now, it's the best I can muster. I was so excited watching her, I didn't realize I was holding my breath as she walked back to her table. She took a few sips, each one followed by a low grunt, clearing her throat. The grunts grew louder and were eventually followed by coughs that became too rough for her to ignore. At this point, the whole break room had taken notice. Excuse me, she said, standing up, quickening her pace to the restroom. She placed a hand on the door and coughed a wonderful red and brown mist all down the face of it. A few jumped out of their seats, while most seemed stunned or unable to register what had happened. Her knees buckled. She gripped her stomach and let out a gasp that sounded as if her lungs were filled with rust and spit. Her forehead hit the floor while she unleashed a painful, broken-up shriek like a toddler. Two men grabbed her up and ran her out the door frantically, with trickles of muddy crimson behind them. Just like that, the room had gone from chaos to silence, with nothing but the confused and terrified faces of her co-workers. Sweet ecstasy in my veins. By lunchtime, I found out the ogre woman had been rushed to the hospital. No word on her condition, but I hope for the worst. Some are still worried, but things went back to normal here pretty quickly. The janitor had cleaned the mess, and it became just a story. Gossip for these oblivious apes. It was when I heard someone mention it could have been the cappuccino that I decided to change up my strategy. I want to stick around here, and perhaps the best way to do that is to make people actually enjoy their coffees. That'll ensure my progress. Unfortunately, word about the cappuccino got to higher-ups, and the next day an inspector had come to check the machine. I made sure to have the inside spotless, as if brand spanking new. So much so that the inspector looked puzzled as to why he'd even been called. Supervisors gave the okay, and the workers were back to ordering their drinks again. Lucky for them, I knew exactly how to keep them coming back. 3 days have passed since inspection, and business has been booming. So many delighted faces ordering, pressing their gnarled, oily fingers against the console, grinning ear to ear. Some coming back 3 to 4 times a day even. It's all thanks to an extra little ingredient. Enough time has passed for me to have grown a bit stronger and allow me to reach into hell for resources to help aid me. Nothing major, but I've found that I can acquire liquids. In this case, the blood of aborted fetuses and infants fresh from Moloch's Mountain, a breathtaking sight to behold. I'll show it to your goofy mustached ass when you get down here after reading. The babies plummet into hell, slamming down onto each other, and the hot, jagged rocks blistering their skin as the blood is continuously pulled from them down the mountain, feeding into Moloch's moats. I had always been attracted to their pain the most. Older children and adults are able to relate their pain. Should they be impaled on hot iron, they're aware of what is happening. They understand the source and feeling of their torture. Infants, however, are unique in their suffering. They can't process or avoid the pain, let alone form a single intelligent thought as to what is happening and why. It is the purest form of anguish there is. The blood of a tortured infant also has rejuvenating effects. Makes you feel and look younger and just happier in general. Humans with power and influence love to partake in its effects, but are unaware of how rapidly it rots the already condemned soul. They're basically stomping on the gas pedal to eternal damnation, just to feel a bit more energetic. Even better, it's far more addicting than any drug, and the withdrawals are immediate. Ever seen an extremely attractive celebrity look shockingly old and worn out seemingly overnight. Well, now you know. "Hey, hurry the hell up, Tom," Joe yelled from the back of the line. I'm going, just give me a second. Now do I want the espresso? Or cappuccino? Or..." Tom mumbled. Joe is one of my favorites here. Ex-military, extremely short-tempered and paranoid. Blames it on his years of service, even though he never stepped foot into a combat zone. He spends most of his day sucking on his tongue, looking for what other people are doing wrong. And Tom, sweet, simple Tom, a knuckle-dragging slob whose mind moves slower than his feet. A big softy. Susan steps in. "Knock it off, you two. It's not going nowhere." The company's token sweet old lady who can't help but make the occasional racist remark here and there. The janitor is an interesting one, too. Deeply religious, and lately I've seen him nervously fiddle with the small crucifix around his neck whenever he enters the room. God had gifted man with a sense for danger that they like to call gut feelings. Such a simple and powerful thing, yet the majority of them simply ignore it and go on to ruin their lives or others. With every cup they consume, I can feel myself connecting with them more and more. Not enough to take full control, but enough to follow and observe them within the building. Joe, however, I've easily built an influence on. His depression and anger practically served as a damn welcome mat. I like to make him uncomfortably warm and forget where he would place things now and then. Small things that build up in an attempt to spark some violence. Nothing yet, but he'll snap. He just needs more time. Now that I've essentially created a building of addicts, it's time to shake things up. I've brought the temperature of the coffees down to just barely passable as warm, and have completely replaced the infant blood with swamp water from Ashma's Circle, filled with the blood, sweat, bile, and waste from hateful souls condemned to endlessly beat each other to the death they wish would come, but never arrives. Obviously, I've tweaked the flavor to make it more tasteful, but it should help to liven things up around here. The first to partake in this new blend is Frankie, a new father of twins and without paid paternity leave, is forced to work all day while facing sleepless nights at home. A perfect cocktail of frustration and exhaustion. What the fuck, dude? He dumped his cup and hit to refill, hoping it was just a bad batch, but was pissed and saddened to taste the same result. Damn it, man. I was really looking forward to this. Disappointment all around this morning. Tempers are beginning to flare as some curse the company and supervisors' names. Around the building, you could see how sluggish and upset everyone was. I decided to spend time with Sasha, a somewhat new hire. She'd always stop by to order hot tea or the decaf options. Who the hell gets a decaf coffee, by the way? Anyways, she was still training on these machines. Beelers, they're called. Massive machines meant to cut and shape metals of various thicknesses. She's got the hang of it, but today is special. She is tired, agitated, and unfocused, making simple mistakes. The machine is running, pulling a long strip of steel into it at a quick rate. I've had her overthinking this job, and just as she was about to step back, I forced her head in the direction of a small piece of tape on the line traveling towards the beeler. I leaned forward into her ear and softly whispered, "If you don't remove the tape in time, it will ruin this job and the tooling in the machine." She lunged forward without a thought, gripping the tape. But before she could rip it off the speed and pull of the line, yanked her arm into the machine's flattener. 7 large metal wheels gripped her fingertips, crushing and splintering the bones as her arm was passed from one to another, skin flattening, ballooning and popping open to release blasts of blood and muscle as the bone ripped its way through any available openings it could find. Her screams filled every nook and corner of the building until she was elbow deep into the hungry machine. Instead of feeding in straight, now the mashed mess of what was once her arm is being fed downward, forcing her further in until her upper torso was forced sideways through the small opening in the side. Her raspy wails were silenced in an instant as her neck was snapped and her face embedded into the opposite shoulder. The lead operator had finally reached the emergency stop button, but it was far too late. It took only seconds. It's been some time since anyone's been called back into work. Past few days have been only police managers and cleanup crews trying to piece together what had happened. On camera, it's clearly a horrific case of operator error, but it's also been discovered that the machine's error sensors had been turned off at some unknown point in time. Had they still been on, she would have only lost a hand or some fingers. Management keeps pointing out her actions, clearly more concerned about the potential lawsuit than saddened by the young woman's death. Seems the case will be getting wrapped up soon. It's been far too quiet and boring here. My mind wanders thinking of the workers, what they're doing and what I could plan for them upon their return. I thought of Frankie, probably relieved to have time at home. A bummer, really. He was getting to such a low point, so vulnerable. My mouth salivated at how close I was to taking him next, but now who knows? I started hearing muffled voices. I had started to wish the police would move on elsewhere, but it wasn't their voices. When I opened my eyes, I was stunned to see that I was standing over Frankie in his own home. He was rocking one crying child while the wife fed another. Before I had a chance to take it all in, I was back in the coffee machine, back in that silent, cold, colorless room. I began laughing, a quiet chuckle that quickly grew into hysterical euphoria. My body shook with the excitement with the realization of how far I've come in my work. Though he's had time at home, Frankie has yet to gain any real rest, and I had completely forgotten the withdrawals he must be feeling on top of everything else. The bridge isn't strong enough yet, but I'm so close. I clenched my fist tightly and began to drool. You're mine, all of you. It's been 9 days since Sasha's death, and everyone has returned to work. Many upset, saying it's far too soon and distasteful considering what happened, but when a major company's losing millions, sooner or later, they're going to crack that whip. Seems the janitor quit too. Suppose he listened to that gut of his. It's a shame, though. I really wanted him. There's a beautiful smell in the air this morning. Everyone scowling, pissed as hell, ready to go into a rage from the swamp water and extreme fatigue from blood withdrawal. I've changed nothing with the swamp mix other than serving some cold and others scalding hot. The smallest inconveniences can drive many to their breaking point. 2 fistfights have already happened in the parking lot, and one worker, Ray, has been in a screaming match with HR and a supervisor. I'll have to check in on that later. Frankie is walking this way, and I see a golden opportunity with having just poured Susan a boiling hot green tea. As the two begin walking towards each other down the hall, I blocked her from his view and quickly lifted his hand outward. In one swift motion, Frankie not only palmed Susan's entire right breast, but also delivered a hard shove, forcing her into the wall. Susan yelled as she tried to catch herself. "What the hell are you doing, pervert?" Frankie was almost too surprised to speak. What? Where did you come from? I didn't mean..." Susan interrupted. "You just assaulted me, you damn pig." She delivered a weak but quick slap to his left cheek. Frankie snapped back. "Fuck you, you old goat. No one would ever want to touch your disgusting raisin-ass body." Susan then threw her tea into Frankie's face and marched away as he dropped to one knee, burying his face into his shirt, screaming. Frankie had to be driven to the hospital while Susan was fired shortly after. After a long, drawn-out argument with the supervisors, Susan stormed out of the building and climbed into her car, unaware that I was tagging along. She sped down the interstate, ranting to herself, "Stupid, arrogant assholes. 38 fucking years I gave that company. They wouldn't be anything without me, those damned fools." With a hard blink, she was no longer in her car. Susan was now standing in a void, blackness and silence in every direction other than her own echoed breathing. She stepped forward, surprised at the small splash from her foot. The shallow liquid under her feet was as black as the space around her. In a low, heavy sigh, I breathed her name aloud. "Susan." She spun around, releasing a mix between a gasp and shriek. "What? Who's there? Where am I?" "It's all right, Susan. Everything's going to be okay. You're home now." Hundreds of tar-soaked pruning arms tore out of the abyss beneath her, grabbing onto her with the intensity of someone drowning, desperately trying to lift themselves over whatever they could for a single breath. Her screams and struggles were pointless as the overwhelming horde of arms pulled her down slowly. Shoulder deep at this point, with every inch of her covered by hands, digging their cracked nails into her flesh, hair, and clothing. She managed to look up and gazed into my eyes, staring back down at her. I placed a finger on her forehead and delivered a gentle push down. Tears streamed down her face, and her muffled whimpers were silenced as she sank below the surface. Susan gasped awake, back behind the wheel of her car on the interstate, and collided with an oncoming 16-wheeler at 93 miles an hour. There was nothing left. Back at work, not much has changed. We're early into the next morning and things are slow. A police officer, a detective, a company supervisor, and some fancy suit are all speaking at one of the tables. I can assure you gentlemen nothing is out of the ordinary here. We're running as smoothly as ever. All of these incidents are just unfortunate luck. The detective spoke. "Incidents? Mr. Fuller, 2 of your employees have died. Another 2 are in the hospital. 3 are missing, and the rest are frighteningly angry, all within a month. Now maybe this is all just a hell of a bad luck streak, or something very serious is going on here." The officer looked over. "Y'all do work with a lot of hazardous chemicals here. Maybe it's having a violent effect on the workers." The fancy suit stood up with a sigh and made his way over to the coffee machine. I smirked. "Here's another tally mark for the scoreboard." The detective called to him. "Getting bored of the conversation, sir?" The suit chuckled. "Bored of you three, maybe. But no, this whole thing has caught quite a bit of attention back at base." Mr. Fuller was sweating, making sure not to say anything that could bring suspicion on the company. The detective leaned back. "I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of it, sir." "Oh, I'm sure you will. I'll be keeping an eye on your work, detective," the suit said, looking back. A tall, pale man. He wore a confident half-smile and had the calmest expression while looking over the drink options. "We've been watching your progress, you know. Impressive stuff." He pressed H3, French vanilla coffee. I wanted this mortal for sure, so I made sure to heavy up the dosage of tortured fetal blood, along with an alluring fragrance found in the iron briar patches of Asmodeus. He took a large gulp. I released a satisfied exhale. Damn good coffee. Tastes just like home. Am I right? He looked up, making direct eye contact with me. I froze. There's no way. Does he see me? I looked behind him. The others were like mannequins. The clock on the wall, the birds outside the window, all frozen in time. "Hey, relax in there. I just thought I'd swing by and pay a visit. It's been a long time since I've been so eager to see someone's next move." He made his way to the window looking out at what might as well have been a photograph. He took another large sip from his coffee. "I knew I had better keep an eye on you after seeing you blatantly disobey a higher-up to get here." He looked back at me with a sharp intensity. "Try not to disappoint." He was gone before I had a chance to speak. The birds continued. By and the now 3 men were continuing on, as if there had never been a fourth at all. The world was back in motion, and I was filled with pride for knowing that I had finally been seen. But by who, I wonder. The pressure's on now. I've got eyes on me from hell and who knows where else. Everyone in this god-forsaken building is right where I want them, though. I'm doubling down on the swamp water, keeping the pleasant aroma and adding one new ingredient, the pulverized, nearly liquefied meat of the souls trapped within Beelzebub's lower jaw. They're scooped up from the chasm he resides in, and forever mashed and churned between the many rows of his molars. You'd think in this state there'd be nothing left of the body or soul, but everything remains. Even while mush spread out between the grooves of the teeth, the pain of being chewed feels to them like the very first crunch every single time. We're 4 hours into the workday, and it's time for lunch. The room is packed tight, everyone sitting scarfing down there. Food in between agitated breathes, most on their 5th or 6th drink of the day. The air is thick with a menacing tension. Joe slams open the door, entering the break room and marching over to Tom, sitting shakily over his meal. "Tom, hey shithead, you want to tell me why I've got all your scrap by my machine?" I noticed that Joe was gripping a small screwdriver lightly coated in oil and metal dust. He bent down, now an inch from Tom's face. "Answer me, you fat slob. All you do is wreck everything and leave behind a mess and food crumbs everywhere." Joe's verbal assault is suddenly cut short. Wide-eyed with a confused and frightened look, Joe chokes up blood and slowly grips the hefty plastic knife Tom has embedded deep into his jugular. Deafening silence lasts for mere seconds before Tom slams him to the table and begins pounding his fist into Joe's temple repeatedly. Spurts of blood hit Samantha's face, who was sitting across from Tom. She licks the splattered blood off her lower lip, and a cold dimness overtakes the eyes. She lunges across the table, removing the knife from Joe's throat, and digging her fingers deep into the slit, desperately removing and devouring whatever she can. All hell breaks loose as a bloody free-for-all erupts between the workers. Derek has Stephen in an arm bar as he eats away at the wrist. Beth is sobbing uncontrollably, beating her head against the concrete wall. The rest are caught in unrelenting fistfights and crazed self-mutilation. I walked slowly between the symphony of carnage I had orchestrated. I nearly shed a tear witnessing the beauty of it all. Oh, and I finally found Ray. He had locked himself in a storage closet, eating away, and the bloated corpses of the HR lady and supervisor he had dragged in days earlier. He clawed at the side of his face, while crying quietly and nervously to himself between each bite. As I was soaking it all in, I quickly realized that Frankie was missing out on all the fun. I shut my eyes, focused, and opened them back up to see that I was standing beside Frankie in his bed, face bandaged up, unable to sleep and recover, his mind racing with bills, self-doubts as a father and provider. The list goes on and on. I can hear his wife and children in the next room, the sounds of crying and hushing rattling his eardrums. I knelt down beside him and whispered thoughts into his mind. There is a way out, a way to quiet all the stress and be rid of it. His eyes shifted downward slowly. You know exactly what you have to do. It would only take seconds. Merciful, really. You can finally bring peace to this family. He sat up out of bed and made his way to the closet. He hesitated a moment before opening the door to reveal a loaded shotgun amidst coats and old moving boxes. He had never really been interested in guns. It was a paranoid purchase, thinking he'd need it for the protection of his family. I made the shrill cries of his children ring unbearably loud in his ears. Shaking violently, he grabbed the shotgun and burst into the next room. His wife jumped in shock, unable to process what just entered the room. "Frankie," she yelled. What are you doing?" She grabbed both babies and held them tightly to her chest. "Honey, please, I know things haven't been great lately. We've been through so much, but please, you have to calm down." Her words went unheard, muffled by the ear-piercing ringing and cries I've locked in his head. Tears streamed down his face. I'm so sorry," he said. I gently helped him to raise the gun and wrapped my hands over his. Both our fingers planted on the trigger. She tried to speak, but fear kept anything other than short, panicked cries from escaping her mouth. My eyes grew large. I clenched my teeth hard with the largest smile I had ever worn. We planted the stock of the shotgun firmly into our shoulders, and as he screamed out, we squeezed the trigger. With a powerful kick and loud bang, we put a hole straight into the ceiling. Silence. She stared at him unblinking, mouth open. Frankie dropped the shotgun, and I felt a hard shove back from him. "What the fuck?" I yelled. He dropped to his knees, sobbing. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. What's happening to me? I can't think. I can't do anything. I She scooted forward with the babies now on both of their laps and wrapped her arms around him, crying, "It's okay. It's okay. I know. I love you. We love you. We'll get through this together." He looked down. His two perfect baby girls, his entire world, right in his lap. He held his wife and children, and a bright light slammed against my face, with a force that felt as if it could have easily killed me, right then and there. I awoke back in the coffee machine, dazed and weak. The break room was dark and empty, faded, blood stains everywhere throughout. How long have I been out? What the hell hit me? I tried to leave the machine but couldn't. My body felt in shambles. From the look of the stains, it's been at least 4, maybe 6 weeks, I thought. Voices grew loud quickly. In walked the officer and detective from before, along with a few others wearing some type of hazmat cleanup suits. "Tell you what, I'll be happy to never step foot in this place again," said the detective. "Tell me about it. The demolition crew can't get here soon enough." My heart sank. This is it. I'll be buried in this rubble and returned to hell. I was worried, but my body ached too much for me to act out or draw them in. I slumped, down defeated. "All right, everyone, let's clear out of here. The boys will be here soon to finish this place off." One by one I watched as they left out the door single file. Their hurried paces reminded me of how quickly it all went by. I relaxed, accepting my fate. Perhaps I'll be welcomed home with praises and a new rank. I grinned and closed my eyes to the satisfying thought. And then I felt it. A 3. Story number 2. Ever heard of exploding head syndrome? I hadn't until it happened, more than once. The first time was after a nap. An explosion woke me inside my skull. Not thunder, not a car engine. Inside, between my ears, like a metal balloon bursting. I walked the house to see what the hell had blown. Everything was normal. My mom watering the plants. Warm air. "Did you hear that?" "You were dreaming," she said. I believed her for a while. 2 nights later, again. Sheets of rain, lightning everywhere. But what I heard wasn't a strike. It was a private bomb with nowhere to echo. In the kitchen I drank water and Googled the symptoms. Exploding head syndrome. A silly cartoon of a stunned man. Not serious, just distressing. Huh. Lights off. Next morning it happened again. I tried to act normal until the bathroom. The mirror gave me a different face. Swelling, lumps, bruises, a lip like a tennis ball. No pain. Not even when I pressed it. Maybe I fell, I told my mom. Sleepwalking. "Where?" she said. "I don't see anything." That's when the different fear showed up. The fear I was going insane. Back to the mirror. The marks were still there. I punched my cheek with a closed fist. Felt the punch, not the wound. The doorbell rang. The neighbor wanted oil. "Do I look off?" I asked. "You look fine," he said. I took a selfie. Perfect. Photos lied. Mirrors didn't. The 4th blast hit at lunch, with my mouth full. I jumped from the chair, spat food, ran to my room. Worse, a fresh gash with dried blood along the edges, my right temple swollen, pushing the ear, the eye half buried. My mom stood behind me, hand on my shoulder. She didn't speak. We booked an appointment. Psychiatry in 2 weeks. That night another one came, and another. Between them, the same kit. Pressure on the eardrums like a plane dropping. Fluorescent hum. A metallic taste that water wouldn't wash away. I stopped looking at mirrors. Showered without looking. Dried without looking. Brushed my teeth in the kitchen. I learned the house's tricks. The oven door reflects if the overhead is on. The microwave rim, too. The TV's black bezel when it's off. Worse. Outside, any shop window could hand me a second of that warped face that wasn't mine anymore. We live surrounded by reflections. I get all of them. They admitted me for 2 days. More than 100 blasts, near, far, right beside me. Nurses checked vitals. Doctors muttered. Someone said stress. Someone parasomnia. I listened to the hum like tape that never cuts. Some blasts stopped sounding and started biting. Others sounded like screams. I don't know if they were mine. Little by little, each blast brought something new. Once my left ear went deaf for half an hour. Another time, my right eye doubled, but only inside the mirror. Out here, everything was fine. In glass, half my face took one lane and the other half another, like the reflection had its own traffic. I tried a week without mirrors. When I came back, the mirror punished me. My forehead split, a cross-shaped cut, bone peeking like a bad tooth. I laughed by reflex, no idea why. My mom asked me not to lock myself in, said that made it worse. I said worse was looking. We covered the mirrors with towels. They looked like framed funerals. The house still had eyes. A spoon was enough. One blast found me in the bank line. Nobody turned. Metal flooded my mouth. I caught myself in the glass door. My lip hung like a bag. I blinked, and it snapped back. I wanted to tell someone, but they called the next number, and I stayed quiet. E-ticket said 73. I let 74 go past me. I Googled again, out of habit. Forums. People who see everything, people who see nothing, people who joke. I closed it all. The hum stayed. I don't know when I decided to end this. The idea stuck. Clean, neat. The gun on the nightstand. The last decision in the bathroom. I went to the mirror to aim. I did what anyone would do. Looked for an eye, a temple. There wasn't a face above my neck. There was something buckled and wet. A black rose with petals of flesh. Veins knotted. Bone splinters like thorns. I brought the barrel close to the glass and tried to find a center. The reflection didn't give me one. I set the gun on the sink and listened. Another blast came, small like a snap. Then the hum. The metal returned to my tongue. I can't keep living like this. I want to sleep. Story number 3. I don't know why I'm posting this. My head is throbbing still, and I'm nursing my headache with whiskey and mushrooms and trying my best to dissociate. And I'm trying to decide whether or not we're going to move. My wife and me. I don't think it's safe in this town anymore. But if I don't write this down, if I don't let someone know what happened to me, then he'll win. And then your town may fall into a green hell, too. Don't try to find me, and don't try to find out where I am. I haven't used any real names here, and I've changed most of the street names, too. Cherry Street is the sole exception. There's a lot of streets by that name all over the country, and changing it feels dangerous in a way I can't explain. I've made it a habit lately to go for walks, sometimes in the evening, sometimes in the early morning, and on a few spectacularly rare occasions, in full dark, when the moon and the stars are my only constant companions. I find the walk invigorates me. It gives me time to think, whether to plan my day, work out a job-related issue, or just to take in some music or a podcast. And, truth told, to lose the spare tire I've been carrying since college, where I take my daily jaunts, is a bit a ways from my house, which sits at the zenith of a long hill. But the neighborhood at the bottom is flat, structured, and best of all, quiet. There's little beyond the occasional whir of a lawnmower to interrupt my thoughts, and the houses themselves are beautiful, if not particularly large. I'm not the only one that likes to traipse the roads that wind uncaringly through the countryside either. There has come to be, in the past several months, a rotating cast of characters with whom I've become quite familiar by face, if not by name. A teenager with Down syndrome that tended to cast his gaze downward whenever anyone passed by, humming atonally under his breath. A couple walking their dachshund up and down Cherry Street, and never beyond that. An old man with a John Deere hat perched on hair that had gone milk white. All of these and more were frequent sights as I made my way around the neighborhood, sometimes nodding as I went by, more often making a single acknowledging glace before leaving them behind me. Animals, too, were a frequent sight as I passed yard after yard on my treks. There was a cairn terrier that yipped frantically as I passed, an American Eskimo with strawberry red fur on one paw from chewing at itself that stared stoically at me until I looked back, at which point he'd run for the door, barking all the while. There was a fenced-in yard with a husky and a corgi in it, and the two tended to ignore me as they pranced and cavorted around each other. A pregnant stray cat peered out at me with weary eyes, her bulbous belly almost ready to push out more strays into the world. They were all familiar to me, and even now the thought of them brings a smile to my face. That day, I had decided to take my walk late in the evening, assured that the sun would set just as I was cresting the hill that led to my home. My stomach was full of cheap beer and expensive steak, and I was itching for the chance to work it off a bit before bed. My wife, as always, kissed me goodbye, reminding me to be careful and pressing my pocket knife into my hands. For protection, she had said, and I took it with humor, because the area was safe, you understand? I had nothing to fear. Down the hill I went, listening as the chirps of birds were replaced by those of crickets, as the sky began to dim and the trees began to blur together in one dark green smear. But there was still light as I reached the bottom, walked cautiously across the road and onto my usual walking path. I stretched and took a moment to tie my shoes, and then walked on. There were 3 churches in that neighborhood stuck in each one of 3 streets that made it up. On Cherry Street was a rundown little Presbyterian chapel, a sign out front proclaiming Jesus I kin. I kept waiting for more of the letters to rub off, curious what combination of gobbledygook would be there to greet parishioners, but had thus far been disappointed. A nice brick Baptist church was parked on the corner of Willow Road and Clark Avenue, complete with a large parking lot and a tall basketball hoop. This last frequently visited by a gaggle of teenagers, the arrhythmic whap of the ball on the ground gaining an almost musical quality after a while. Finally, there was a Methodist church at the far end, close to the main road, on Orchid Street. I'd actually been inside once or twice, although the preacher there left a bad taste in my mouth, and I haven't been back since. The first church, the one on Cherry Street, was the first I would reach on my usual route, and it was the only one against which I would lean as I cast my gaze down the road. Cherry Street had been named, as near as I could tell, for the number of black cherry trees that lined its length, almost 30 by my sloppy count. They had certainly been there for as long as I could remember, their stature lording over the houses and spilling leaves across the road in the fall. The sight was breathtaking in the summer, with the views of the houses nearly obstructed by a tunnel of green. In the spring they'd bloom, producing small clusters of white and yellow flowers, their scent carrying on the breeze so strongly I could almost smell them from the moment I left my house. And in the autumn, the leaves turned such a bright shade of orange that the street itself appeared to be on fire, the whispering of leaves easily mistaken for the whoosh of fire. Cherry Street was the best part of my walk, and the only portion where I found myself really looking at my surroundings, and not just looking but seeing. And so I saw the laughing man even before I heard him, his jovial chortles growing out of the rustling leaves like pokeweed. Out of it he came thumping up the road, wearing worn-out sneakers, the kind that lacked any brand insignias on the side, only 19 through 99 at your local Walmart. His jeans had faded at the knees and had worn thin on the inside thighs from the friction of his mountainous legs rubbing together. A shirt the color of the very leaves around him bore an image of a bear wearing sunglasses seated at a piano. Blind Bear Cafe. It read in bold red lettering. There were sweat stains in the armpits and beneath his sizable breasts, and as he marched along, arms pumping left to right, the shirt would slide up, exposing his generous gut. But his size didn't catch my attention, nor his worn-out clothes. It was his laugh. It sounded joyous, but not the kind of gut-wrenching laughter that would come when someone told a particularly outrageous joke. Just the sweet, good-natured, chuckling two friends who hadn't seen each other in years might share over an order of onion rings and a couple of beers, and matched with his face, round but handsome, like a cross between Bernie Mac and Anthony Anderson. He put a slight grin on my face, too. By the time he'd caught up with me, he on his side of Cherry Street and me on mine, I was moving again, fixing to beat the sunset back home. I looked out at him, suddenly inspired to a rare interaction with one of my fellow walkers, and called, "What's so funny, man?" He turned, and his laughter ceased. He was still smiling as he fixed his gaze on me, but some prickle on the back of my neck made me uneasy. But then he was laughing again, and the feeling vanished so quickly that I wondered if it was there at all. His large frame jiggled to the corner of Cherry Street and Willow Road, and then he turned left and was swallowed by the trees. I thought perhaps I'd see him again as my route took me to the other end of Willow Road, but when I'd reached it, the laughing man was nowhere to be found. Perhaps, I thought, he lived in one of the houses there, though I'd never seen him before in the months that I'd been walking around the neighborhood. Perhaps he'd cut through a yard and wandered into the woods behind Clark Avenue, traversing an old trail I didn't know about. But in the end, any thoughts of the laughing man and his peculiarities were pushed from my mind. After all, he was just another walker, and we each kept to our own. I didn't think about him again until the next day, when I decided to go walk straight after work, with the sun still blazing down on my back. I didn't expect to see him again, as unlike me, most walkers seemed content to do their meandering at the same time each day, and I wasn't disappointed, except for the man I thought of as Nipples, for he never wore a shirt whenever I saw him, trimming his hedges. There wasn't a soul to be found in the neighborhood, but for myself and cross-eyed Mary, an old mutt, woofing at me half-heartedly from behind her fence. As I sometimes did when I would go walking, I changed sides of the road, this time walking along the right side of each street, for variety, I suppose, although little ever changed, but whose mailboxes I would need to veer around as I went. But then I spied something peculiar as I walked over the rough gravel and cracked pavement lining the excuse for a sidewalk, which bore me footprints. At least they looked like footprints, but they were growing. Left foot and right foot. Each print had sparse blades of grass growing out of the ground, even over tiny bits of gravel and on the concrete itself. It wasn't at all obvious that they were footprints. There was barely enough grass to even suggest this, but it stuck in my mind as the only possible solution. But how? And then I remembered the last person I'd seen walking this road. Wide, but shuffling gait, beating on the pavement to some jerky, a rhythmic beat. The laughing man. And I thought, and I wondered. I brought it up to my wife when I returned home. Not just the footprints, but the man himself. I described High, a tall, jolly black giant, ambling along, arms flailing about as only the most morbidly obese seemed to do, chuckles rumbling out of a mouth stuck in a perpetual grin. It was a little weird, I told her. Maybe he was listening to something, she had said, a comedy podcast or stand-up or something. When I told her that there was nothing in his ears, she paused. Maybe he only had one earbud in, she offered, so he could still hear traffic. Maybe, I thought. It fit. But then I brought up the footprints and the grass that seemed to rise out of them like tiny green flames, and she put a hand up to her hair to twirl a strand of it around her finger in thought. You said he might have gone into the woods, right? He'd have had to go through a yard to do it. Maybe he walked through someone's yard before and picked up grass seed on his shoes and kind of left it behind as he walked. Or just old lawn clippings that looked like grass growing. Maybe. I thought again. That fit, too. One earbud in and a habit of trespassing and collecting grass seed on the bottoms of his worn-out sneakers. That was a thought. It was sensible. Occam's razor, I thought that was called. But it didn't feel right. I had been certain that when the man turned to look at me, there had been nothing in his ears but my greeting. And the grass. That wasn't clippings, I was certain. It was growing out of the concrete. And as far as I knew, that just wasn't possible. It was another 2 days before I saw the laughing man again. And when I did, something seemed to have shifted. In the interim, I had noticed the grass in those footprints growing thicker, like someone had poured fertilizer on the spot. The concrete seemed chipped there, and there was even a dandelion rising from one of the footprints, too. On the day I saw that man again, I barely even noticed the grass anymore. I was far too focused on him. I had reached the church on Cherry Street, and was leaning against it again, looking down the verdant tunnel that stretched invitingly along the road, enveloping it in welcoming green velvet. I thought to count the trees again, although I usually eventually gave up, when I saw him shucking and jiving up the way. Was he dancing? No, although there seemed to be a bit more pep in his step that day. He was almost skipping up the street, sporting a different shirt this time. Still green, but featuring a pot leaf, wearing sunglasses, and the slogan, "Why be high on life when you can just be high?" The sweat stains were even more severe, drenching his back and the sides of his great gut. He seemed a little thinner now, I thought. His laugh was the same as ever, though, a pleasant chortle that nonetheless sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't explain it, only that the laugh seemed false, a ham-fisted facade to mask. What exactly? This time, as he passed me, I made the point of waving to him, hoping to get him to turn his head so I could see for certain if he was wearing an earbud, hoping to prove that I was just being paranoid. "Hello again, buddy," I called, trying to keep the nervous edge out of my voice. "Still laughing, eh?" And then, with a thought both sly and breathtakingly stupid, "Whatever you're listening to must be pretty funny." The laughing ceased again as he turned to face me. There was certainly nothing in his ears, I noticed. I expected a puzzled look, like he was confused that he was supposed to be listening to anything but the rustle of trees, and what was I, stupid? But instead he just fixed his gaze on me, smile sloughing off his face like a snake discards its old skin. His eyes were green, I saw now, the poison yellow-green of a dart frog, and they looked hateful. Then as quickly as that look came, it was gone, replaced by his relaxed smile. The silence, oppressive as I realized that I couldn't hear anything. No lawnmower, no birds, no insects, was replaced by his charming chuckling, and he was off, disappearing around the bend where Cherry Street met Willow Road, with nothing in his wake to denote he'd been there but my own rapidly beating heart. I stood there for a great long while, leaning against the church's wall, staring through the trees as though I might still catch sight of him, but I didn't. And when my phone rang, it was my wife wondering where the hell I was, as it was almost 20 minutes past when she expected me back. I swore to myself and turned to leave, casting my glance one more time at the sidewalk on the other side of the road. It wasn't really much of a sidewalk, I thought, more like just the place where the road met the grassy yards of the neighbors, broken up here and there by thick chunks of what might have been a sidewalk once. Had there been a full sidewalk here before? I thought back. Certainly not since my wife and I had moved in, but there was a tickle in the back of my head like something wasn't quite right with the situation. I wondered. For the next week I didn't see any sign of him bustling up the side of the road, bopping along to music that wasn't there. I had started to wonder if, perhaps, he was nothing more than a hazy hallucination, born of the 90-degree heat that seared the pavement and made even the most stalwart dogs pant and whine for water. But I knew I'd seen him. I knew that laugh that seemed at once cheerful and crazed. The bubbly, joyful smile was just a sewer grate, barely covering the reeking depths below. And then one day, I saw him again. It was early one Saturday morning. Early enough that very few people would be out and about, especially on the weekend. But it was set to rain all day, and I was determined to go for my walk before the road disappeared under a deluge of water. I woke up early enough so as not to wake my wife, wolfed down a piece of toast and a couple not quite done eggs, and started my walk, choosing a different route this time for variety's sake. To my great surprise, one of my fellow walkers was out. The guy I thought of as Jebediah, for the wide-brimmed straw hat he always wore, and the almost Neanderthal brow that sported beneath it 2 watery brown eyes that spoke little of intelligence. He nodded at me as I walked by, and I nodded right back, the only communication we ever shared. He was walking in the opposite direction, and if I knew his route, I did. I knew everyone's usual routes by now. We would pass again on Cherry Street, and sure enough, I saw him again, rounding the bend just as I took my usual spot against the wall of the Presbyterian church. I could smell the rain in the air and judged I might have just enough time to get home before the sky opened up and vomited its watery payload all over town. There was Jebediah, or Jeb, I supposed, at the far end of town there, making his slow, confident way up the side of the road, stepping through grass that had grown thick there. There really should be a sidewalk. I remember thinking. I smiled when I saw my walker friend. Like the rest of them, he and I could share this one specific thing. And even if we never really spoke to each other, there was still a quiet understanding between us, like the mutual respect of 2 hunters passing each other in the forest on their ways to bag their respective kills. It was a connection, I suppose. But that smile faded as I saw the laughing man coming up behind him. He seemed to positively melt out of the trees as he shucked and jived up the side of the road, belting out his austere chortling. He looked even thinner now, like he'd lost another 50-60 pounds since the previous week. And I wondered if he'd even eaten since I'd last saw him. He wore a brown shirt with a picture of a football on it and writing too worn to be legible. He was walking faster than I thought he could. He would certainly overtake Jeb before long. His shoulder collided with the straw-hatted man, knocking him to one side as the laughing man continued his solitary shuffle, chuckling to himself as he went. "Hey, hey," Jeb called out to him. "What the fuck is the matter with you? Did you not see me there, you tubby black fuck?" The laughing ceased. I felt a dark churning in my gut as I watched the laughing man turn around, that crazed smile never leaving his face. He regarded Jeb with a single glance before, incredibly, the laughing began again in earnest. I could see the disturbance on my fellow walker's face as he realized what I'd known all along. The laughing man wasn't right. There was some kind of stark sickness, some heavy wrongness with him. From far away, I couldn't see his eyes to know what it would be like to have that wrongness fill my entire field of vision. But I quaked at the thought. A hand shot out and gripped Jeb's throat. The laughing grew louder, eyes that immediately widened from the shock of such a sudden and frightful act quickly flashed to anger and then fear. The laughing man's grip was iron. Jeb thrashed his head back and forth, arms coming up and raking along that hand, clawing feebly. If he cried out or made a single noise of protestation, I couldn't hear it. The laughter covered all. There was a charge in the air, almost electric. I could feel the hair all over my body rise to attention. There was the malodorous stench of ozone in the air. I decided to flee the scene, tried to turn, realized I couldn't. My eyes refused to close. I wasn't sure I was even still blinking. The laughing man's arm rose, and Jeb along with it. Slowly, slowly, until only his toes remained on the ground, like a macabre ballet dancer standing on point. Then incredibly, his feet left the ground. The laughing man's chuckle seemed to resound in the leafy tunnel that was Cherry Street as Jeb rose higher, higher. His fingers groped, slapped at the laughing man's face, seeking purchase there to annoy, to hurt, to convince the black giant, now so much like some fierce god, to release his tortured neck. Then something thin but jagged emerged from Jeb's throat. Sweat stood out on my forehead as I realized, incredulously, that it was a stick from which a single, verdant leaf sprouted. The laughing man was turning now, his back to me, as he swung Jeb around with no more difficulty than a child with a rag doll, stalking forward to the nearest lawn and suspending him over it almost expectantly. Still laughing, always laughing. I wondered if the occupant of that house was crouched inside, as frightened and unable to move as I at the scene unfolding before us. Jeb had turned his attention to the stick, no branch, that was still sliding smoothly out of his mouth. He snapped the first twig off of it, gripped the thicker branch, and pulled, tugged, wrenched at it, but to little effect. One of his shoes dropped off, and I could see a network of brown-white tendrils sliding out of his toes. Roots. Then a hand shot to his eye, and my stomach turned as between his trembling fingers another branch shot out between them. The green leaves stained red with sticky blood and eye gore. I was going to be sick, but not even my stomach was empowered to move in this maddening spell I was under. The laughing man carried on as Jeb's arms began to rise, as nails were ripped from their beds to allow more branches, more leaves, to erupt from their fleshy prison. He turned his palms skyward, as if to seek supplication from God himself. I was suddenly aware of the church behind me, and I wondered wildly how the Creator could allow this horrid, frightening vision to continue. But it was almost over. Jeb had ceased his struggling as his skin rippled and sloughed off, rough brown bark replacing it. His shirt was shredded as his chest widened, becoming a thick, solid trunk. The laughing man's terrible voice had been joined by the groaning of swelling wood. He didn't need to hold Jeb's neck anymore. What remained of my fellow walker was now quite literally rooted to the spot, the tendrils of roots from his feet greedily spearing into the ground beneath him. His pants split at the crotch, and his belt tore apart. A few more seconds, and it was done. A massive black cherry tree stood before the laughing man now, surrounded by scraps of fabric, and two torn-up shoes resting against the trunk. The spell was broken. A low whine escaped my lips as the laughing man turned, and I could see he had grown fat again, as if he had just eaten and eaten well. His eyes met mine, and even from that distance I could see how they glowed, no longer the toxic yellow-green that promised poison, but brightly pulsed a deep, vile green that made me think of radioactivity and bioluminescent fungi. His laughter was still that same, even volume, laughing at a joke I was only now beginning to get. He took a step toward me, and I broke. I turned and ran, fearing as I went that the laughing man's slow, easy amble would quicken into a full sprint to catch me, to change me, like he'd done to Jeb. A painful throbbing thrummed under my left temple, sending streaks of pain through me. I ran heedless of that pain, crossed the main road, only narrowly dodging a battered Ford pickup truck. The driver laid on the horn as I passed, but I couldn't hear it. Not over the sounds of laughter that I could still hear, still feel inside my head. A perverse invasion that blotted out all else. I thundered up my road, one so cracked and broken that I very nearly fell, and if I had, I was certain I would have stayed there. My flesh turned to bark, my hair to leaves. Perhaps berries would grow from branches and the birds would eat me, bit by bit. I didn't fall. I didn't slow. I raced up my driveway and threw open the door. My dogs howled and barked. My wife thundered in, her face a mix of shock and worry as she saw me, as she considered my haunted, pale face and wild eyes and heaving stomach and trembling limbs. She asked me what happened, what was wrong. I fell into her arms and wept. That was the end of my daily sojourns to that neighborhood, and especially to Cherry Street. I put in time-off requests to my job so I could spend the next week at home, still fearful that the moment I left, the laughing man would be waiting for me, with a twinkle in his two green eyes and his belly jiggling with that austere laughter. My wife got the sordid story out of me the very next day, and while I don't think she believed me, I think she thought I'd had a mental break. She supported me, treating my week off like a well-deserved mental health break. I was able, by the end of that week, to force my feet to carry me over the threshold of my home and out to the car. And slowly, gradually, my life resumed its normal course. I still walk, of course. It's good for me and for my still shrinking waistline. But I do it at the gym, on a treadmill. The sweet perfume of grass and wildflowers has been replaced by the stink of sweat and disinfectant. The sounds of birdsong replaced by grunts and the clang of weights. But that's a small price to pay to keep me away from there. Away from him. I did go back to Cherry Street eventually, of course. For closure, my much-needed therapist told me when I finally worked up the nerve to recount this tale to her too. I didn't go on foot, however. Even if it was only the thickness of a windshield that separated me from the outside, I felt infinitely safer in the seat of my S10. The street was still there. The same dilapidated houses devoid of occupants. The same overgrown driveways. The same abandoned church covered with poison ivy and Virginia creeper vines. I stopped in front of the house before which the tree which had once been Jeb stood. I felt another throb start beneath my left temple. You see, I remember what happened that day. I remember which lawn the laughing man had chosen to make Jeb's grave. But I also remember that exact tree, having always been there, having actually leaned against it once to tie my shoes. I remember those houses having well-manicured lawns and braying dogs. Remember the cars filling the lot of the church on Sunday. I remember a sidewalk, but I also remember Cherry Street like this, abandoned, peaceful, yes, but devoid of all life, save that of plants. What happened? What was still happening? I looked onward at the great number of black cherry trees lining the street. Almost 50, I counted, and a shiver worked up my spine. My lips parted, and I thought I was going to weep again. But I was surprised by the wild, horrible, senile sounds that came sputtering from my cracked lips. I was laughing. Story number 4. Have you ever heard voices in the woods? Not just like, oh, maybe someone's out hiking, but voices that sound close. Too close. That makes your stomach drop because no one's supposed to be there. Yeah, that happened to me. And I still don't know what the hell it was. So this was the summer after graduation. We were finally done with high school. Me, Aaron, Jay, Priya, and Tiff. 5 of us. We wanted to celebrate the way you only can when you're 18 and invincible. Jay found this camping spot way out in Wisconsin called Indian Mound Reservation. Locals just call it IMR. It's one of those Boy Scout properties. Kind of maintained, but mostly left alone now. Thick woods, old trails, and yeah, deep Native American history. The kind of land that holds on to things. I brought my dog, Nova, black, lab mix, sweet as hell, chill in the car, never bites. But the second we got out near the edge of the reservation, she changed. I mean, ears back, tail stiff. She was whining, pacing in circles, growling at absolutely nothing. I figured maybe she smelled a coyote or something, but even after 45 minutes, she wouldn't calm down. It was late afternoon, maybe 4:30. Summer light just starting to mellow out. Sky kind of grayed over with clouds like the sun was struggling to push through. The whole place had that washed-out color tone. Pines and birches in muted greens. The dirt path pale and dry. Everything looked normal but felt wrong. You know what I mean? We were still wandering around, trying to find a flat spot for the tents, when Nova just froze. Dead stop. Wouldn't move an inch. I kept tugging her leash, but she just growled low and locked her legs. Priya walked over to check what was freaking her out, and that's when we noticed it. This weird pile of stones. Like, not random. They were arranged. Almost like those old-school burial markers you see in documentaries. I tied Nova to a branch and walked toward it. From far, it looked small. But as we got closer, the thing opened up into this shallow pit, like a circle had been carved right into the earth. The air shifted the second I stepped in, dead still and way colder than it should have been. Summer evening, but I swear it felt like late October. I started noticing these small, flat stones near the center. Some of them had symbols scratched into them. Nothing super clear, but like spiral shapes, slashes, maybe even letters. I don't know. But standing there, I got this wave of dizziness, like heavy-lid sleepy, out of nowhere. That's when Aaron, he's this lean guy, glasses, always makes stupid bets, called out, said our names loudly. He was standing just outside the pit, looking concerned. We climbed out, kind of groggy, and walked over to him, and he said the weirdest thing. He thought we were messing with him because apparently, the second we stepped inside the circle, we just stood there, frozen, staring at nothing. He said he was about to come get us when he heard footsteps behind him, heavy ones, and Nova started going nuts, barking and howling like she was ready to fight. So he grabbed her and rushed over to us. The thing is, I remember moving around in there, checking out the stones. I swear I walked the whole circle, but according to Aaron, we never moved. Anyway, we bummed around for a while, trying to pick a spot. Jay found this clearing up on a small ridge, slightly sloped but dry, with this sick overlook facing west. We could see the tree line dipping into some valley far off, and even spot a chunk of what we thought was more of these old burial mound areas through the gaps. We were joking, setting up tents, collecting firewood, cracking open drinks. But I kept hearing these voices. At first I thought maybe I was just hearing echoes or something bouncing off the hills, but they weren't echoes. They were close, not whispers or yelling, just normal speaking voices, but like muffled and garbled. I couldn't make out any words, just the rhythm of the conversation, and it sounded like it was right over my shoulder, but every time I turned, there was nothing, no one. I tried to brush it off, kept telling myself it was just other campers, but there weren't any other camps nearby. The ranger station was miles away. No cars, no smoke. Still, I told myself I was just overthinking. We were about done setting up when Tiff came jogging back from the trees. Dude looked spooked, pale, breathing hard. He kept glancing over his shoulder like someone was behind him. I swear someone was following me. He said, didn't run, just walked behind me, step by step. I thought it was one of you guys screwing around. We laughed. Of course we did. Said, dude, it's a forest, probably a deer. But even Nova had her eyes fixed on the path he came from. We tried to forget it, made a fire, cooked hot dogs, and passed around some snacks. Everything felt halfway normal, but one thing that felt odd was how quiet the wood is. Too quiet. No crickets, no wind, like the place was holding its breath. Later, around 10, I crawled into my tent and realized I had left my flashlight in the car. It was a little way off, maybe 200 meters down a trail, past the burial marker rocks. So I headed out, no big deal. Halfway, there I saw Aaron, or I thought I saw Aaron. He was ahead of me, maybe 40, 50 feet, walking toward a different trail that veered toward the cliffside. I recognized his big maroon hoodie and that lazy shuffle walk he does. And he was whistling this dumb tune we'd all been joking about earlier. So I shouted, "Bro, where you going? I'm heading to the car. Need my torch." He didn't answer, just turned and grinned a little, then said, "Why are you following me?" His voice had this delay, like an echo, or like he was practicing the line first. I laughed, called out again, "I'm not following you, man. Chill." But he kept walking faster, turned the corner and disappeared into the dark. I got to the parking area, grabbed my flashlight. On my way back, I paused at the fork in the trail, looked down the path he'd taken. It was just black, silent. When I got back to camp, I was like, "Yo, Aaron, why'd you bail on me? I saw you walking off." He looked at me, confused as hell. "What are you talking about? I've been sitting here for the past 20 minutes. Tiff chimed in. "He didn't leave. We've all been here." My blood went cold, because I know what I saw. The hoodie, the whistle, the voice. That was him. I tried to shake it off. They said I was tired, or drunk, or both. And honestly, I started to believe it. Until what happened at 3 a.m. I woke up needing to pee. Sucks, I know. So I grabbed my flashlight and walked off into the woods a bit. Did my business, turned back, and that's when I heard it. The sound of a tent zipper. I froze. Then a few seconds later, I saw someone step out of the tent. It looked like Aaron again. He walked a bit, lit a cigarette. I watched the lighter flick 3 times before it caught flame. Each strike of the lighter lit his face for maybe half a second, and every single time, it looked wrong. Not dramatic, just off. The first flash hit his face, and his eyes were all white. No pupils, no focus. I felt this jolt go through me. Second flick, his pupils were back, but they were tiny, dots. The third flash, his face moved, not flinched, but really moved. The skin shifted sideways, slow, as if it wasn't attached right, sliding across his skull. I kept staring, expecting the features to settle back to normal, but they didn't. The proportions kept slipping. It felt like watching someone wear Aaron's face, like a skin suit. He finally lit that cigarette and took one slow drag. That's when he looked at me and said, "Can you hear me?" And his voice? It was Aaron's voice, but like it had been recorded, played back. I said, "Yeah, man, what's up with your face?" In a louder, sharper tone, he said, "Can you hear me?" I was like, "Yeah, chill. You trying to wake everyone up?" He shook his head and turned toward the cars. I followed, still thinking he was just messing with me. Except when I rounded the car where he'd gone, no one was there. Like, no one. He vanished. I stormed back, pissed, went to his tent, yanked it open, and he and Jay were both already awake, sitting upright, wide-eyed. They said someone had unzipped their tent minutes earlier, opened it, waited, then zipped it back up. They hadn't moved because they were terrified. But they swore it wasn't them. I don't know what I followed that night, but it looked like Aaron, walked like him, smiled like him, whistled like him, asked the exact question he would. But it wasn't him. None of us slept much after that. Nova didn't lie down at all, just kept pacing in circles around our tents like she was guarding something. In the morning, we packed up fast. Didn't even stay for breakfast. The trail felt heavier somehow. I've told people this story before. They say it's stress, sleepwalking, maybe, but I know what I saw. And the worst part is, I don't think it left. On our way back in the car, I caught a glimpse. Rearview mirror, split second. Aaron, standing behind the trees, near the edge of the reservation. Same maroon hoodie, same posture, just watching. I turned around fast, heart in my throat, but Aaron was right there, in the back seat, between Priya and Tiff, head down, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up the rest of the drive, not once. I don't think it wanted to hurt us. I think it just wanted to be us. Story number 5. I noticed it first on a Wednesday morning. I only realized something was off because I stubbed my toe on the corner of my bed. I've lived in this room for 3 months now. Same layout, same morning routine, same bleary shuffle toward my desk to check if I'd missed any passive-aggressive seminar emails. I don't stub my toe. Not unless something's moved. The bed frame was about 6 inches further from the wall than usual. Not by a lot, but enough that I knew. It left a thin line of dust visible on the carpet, where it used to sit like a ghost outline. That's what made me stop. I stood there, blinking at it. It's not the kind of bed you move by accident. Solid, wood, heavy. You have to lift one end to reposition it, and it makes this awful scraping noise that echoes through the flat. There's no way someone could have moved it during the night without waking me up, or the rest of the building. I checked. My door, locked from the inside, same as always. Window, still latched. Room, still mine. My first thought was maybe I did it in my sleep, but I don't sleepwalk. I don't even toss and turn much. I wake up in the same position I fall asleep in, usually, with my arm completely numb and my pillow covered in drool. I moved the bed back, more annoyed than anything. My toe throbbed. That's when I noticed the lamp. It sits on my desk, angled toward my chair. Always has. I'm obsessive about my lighting setup. I do all my coursework late, and that little spotlight of yellow is the only thing keeping me from going blind during all-nighters. Now it was facing the wall. Not knocked or bumped. Rotated. Rotated deliberately, like someone had turned it, so the light was pointing into the corner instead of the desk. Like someone wanted it not to shine on my work, or on me. I frowned, tried to remember if I'd done it. Maybe I'd been on a call and didn't want the glare in my face. Maybe I bumped it while grabbing my charger. Except it wasn't just the lamp. My chair was at a different angle, too. Slightly pulled out from the desk. The plug for my laptop wasn't in the socket. It was neatly coiled on the table like I was prepping for a move. Nothing stolen. Nothing damaged. Just arranged. Carefully. Quietly. I didn't mention it to the others. At uni, half the flats usually hung over or high at any given point, and everyone's constantly borrowing or touching each other's stuff without asking. But my door was locked. Still locked, and I sleep light. I would have heard it. Right? I shook it off, told myself I was tired, maybe stressed, maybe it was nothing, just uni paranoia, cabin fever, messing with myself. But that night when I got into bed, I moved the lamp back to face the desk. I pushed the chair in and plugged the charger back in. And just before I turned off the light, I took a quick photo of my room, just to be sure. I didn't plan to mention anything. I figured if I started telling people I thought my furniture was moving on its own, someone would recommend I see a therapist, or worse, start recording me while I sleep for TikTok clout. But I didn't have to bring it up. It was Katie who cracked first. I was in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to scream when she appeared in the doorway looking like hell. Oversized hoodie, yesterday's eyeliner, socks that didn't match. Not unusual, but there was this weird tightness in her face, like she hadn't slept properly. "You were up late, right?" she asked. I shrugged. "Yeah. Why? Did you go in my room?" I blinked. No. Why would I? My mirrors moved. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Not accusing, exactly, but watching me too closely. It's not just moved. It's angled. Like, deliberately. I always keep it facing the window. Now it's turned toward the bed, and my ring light's unplugged. That made me pause. "Maybe you did it and forgot," I offered. "Like sleepwalking or something." She shook her head. "I don't sleepwalk, and I always plug my ring light in before bed because I use it as a lamp. I even remember switching it on." She paused. "And my phone was under the bed this morning. I don't keep it there." We stood in silence for a beat, kettle bubbling up behind us. "You sure you didn't go in?" "Positive," I said. "My door was locked. Didn't leave. My room." "Mine wasn't," she muttered, then added too casually, "It is now." Later that day, I bumped into Jen in the hallway. She was standing outside the bathroom, arms folded, staring at nothing. "You moved my desk," she said, not looking at me. "Jesus Christ, not this again. It's facing the window now. Dead center, perfect alignment, like some interior. Design freak came in during the night and decided to feng shui my coursework stress." She turned, narrowed her eyes. "That's not a joke, by the way. The chair's lined up, too. My Bluetooth speaker's been unplugged, and the plug's folded over the top, neatly. Neatly, she pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. I don't do neat. The desk was immaculate, lined up like it was being presented in an IKEA showroom. A water bottle, dead center, coaster aligned, chair pushed in. It looked curated. Jen doesn't curate. Jen leaves half-empty Monster cans in every room like she's claiming territory. "You trying to mess with us for content or something?" she asked. "Like a prank channel or some flat horror story bullshit?" "I swear I'm not doing anything," I said, holding up my hands. She didn't say anything else, just walked into the bathroom and closed the door harder than necessary. We had dinner together that night, well, kind of. Everyone microwaved their own disasters and ended up orbiting around the living room like lazy satellites. One person on the sofa, two on the floor. Carrie perched on the armrest like a gremlin, bowl of pesto pasta in hand. "What if we're doing it to ourselves in our sleep?" she asked between mouthfuls. "Or maybe there's some flat elf," Sally added, yawning. "Like that story, the cobbler thing. But instead of shoes, it just wants our shit symmetrical." "Casper the anal retentive," Jen muttered. There was laughter. Light, scattered, a little too forced. Then someone said quietly, "Or maybe we've got a creep with a key." Everyone stopped for a second. Then Katie snorted. "If someone's creeping around rearranging my shit instead of robbing me, they're the weirdest criminal alive." "Or the most patient," Sally said. She was mostly under a blanket now, just her eyes and wine glass visible. "They're playing the long game. Next week, they'll alphabetize our books and sort the spice rack by trauma." More laughter. As we all went off to bed, I heard it. The quiet click. One by one. Everyone was locking their doors now, including mine. And yet in the morning, things still weren't quite right. I started keeping a log, not some proper journal or anything, just a note on my phone, titled, where I listed what had changed and when. At first it was small stuff. Thursday, 9/12. The bed was 4 inches off center. Friday, 8:44. The lamp turned fully toward the wall again. Saturday, 10:03. The bin emptied. A perfectly clean bag inside. No smell at all. That last one weirded me out more than the others. We're 5 students living in a 3-bed flat. No one empties the bin without complaining about it at least twice, and definitely not without stuffing it full of food wrappers, crushed red, bulls, and someone's half-eaten rice that's started its own ecosystem. But Saturday morning? Pristine. Bag tucked neatly around the rim. No overhang, no smell, no noise. Like it had never been used. That same night, I moved my desk slightly, just to test something. I dragged it an inch to the left, not enough to notice casually, but enough that I'd know. I took a photo before bed, tucked my chair in, locked the door, left my charger plugged in, did everything exactly how I wanted it. Woke up the next morning. Desk was back. Chair slightly further under. Charger unplugged and coiled neatly on the windowsill. But the worst part, there was a fresh post-it note on my monitor that said, "Nice try." I stood there for so long, my phone alarm restarted. I didn't touch anything. I didn't even breathe properly. No one else had keys to my room. No one had come in. I checked the photo. Desk moved. Time stamped. I checked the new one. Desk back. Time stamped. It wasn't a prank. Not anymore. I confronted the others in the kitchen. Calmly. No accusations. I just said, "Someone's in my room while I sleep." They all looked at me like I'd dropped a turd in the sink. "You sure you're not just doing it and forgetting?" Carrie asked, voice too light. "No offense, mate, but you're not exactly a heavy sleeper." Katie added, "You wake up when someone breathes outside your door. Could be stress," Sally offered. "You've got that coursework due, right?" Jen didn't say anything, just stared into her cereal like it had answers, so I asked her directly. "Anything weird in your room?" She hesitated, long enough to make everyone else turn toward her. "My laptop's on the floor every morning," she said finally. "Closed, battery dead. I keep it charging on my desk every night." "Could have fallen," someone said. "Every night?" No one responded. "And it's not just fallen," Jen added. "It's placed right under the bed, and my desk drawers always open a crack." She looked up. "Someone's looking through my stuff. I can feel it." That night we all locked our doors again. Some of us stacked chairs against the handle. Sally wedged a spoon under hers for vibes. Didn't matter. Next morning, every room was changed. Katie's desk had been rotated a full 90 degrees to face her wardrobe. Carrie's bookshelf was sorted by color. Sally's wall calendar was flipped to October 2031. Mine, everything was perfect. Bed, desk, and lamp aligned like a blueprint. Every item spaced evenly. A line of socks laid out end to end, like someone had measured the gaps between them. And on my windowsill, another post-it. This one said, "Better." By this point, I'd ruled out a prank. If someone was fucking with us, they were doing it with the dedication of a serial killer or a niche performance artist. No chaos, no mess, no attention-seeking. Just quiet, invasive order. Everything clean, everything intentional. So I did the only thing I could think of. I set up a camera. I dug out my old Logitech webcam from the drawer under the socks and random cables void, dusted it off, and wedged it onto the shelf above my desk. Not subtle, not fancy, but high enough to get most of the room. Bed, desk, chair, door. The cupboard wasn't in frame, but whatever. I wasn't expecting a ghost crawl space episode. I cleared 100 GB off my laptop, created a folder labeled Do Not Delete. Opened OBS, hit record. I even left the lights on just to make sure the footage wouldn't be pitch black. If something moved, I'd see it. I checked the angle 3 times before bed, took a photo of the setup, locked my door, hid the key in my sock drawer. Then I laid down, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling like I was waiting to be abducted. Recording 1. Size 1.8 megabytes. The next morning, the file was exactly 2 seconds long. Video, black and white, still of the room. No audio, no movement. And I wasn't in the bed, just an empty frame. Covers untouched. Pillow hasn't been laid on, like I hadn't been there at all. I checked the time code, 11:11 p.m., which is exactly when I turned the camera on. I told myself maybe I hit record after I got up to turn off the light. Maybe it glitched. Maybe it corrupted. I told myself a lot of things. Recording tonight too. I tried again. Same setup. Double-checked the software, triple-checked the angle, left the lights on again, left the laptop charging. This time, the recording was 7 minutes long. Progress, I thought, until I watched it. The footage started normal. Me climbing into bed, adjusting the blanket, grabbing my phone. Then jump cut. No fade, no glitch. Just an abrupt edit. 1 second I'm lying there, scrolling TikTok. The next bed, empty. Room quiet. Nothing moves. The last 5 minutes of the file were just stillness. But here's the worst part. I checked my screen time. It said I'd been on my phone until 3:27. The video ends at 11:22. Recording 3, I wasn't the only one trying to catch something. Sally came into my room Sunday afternoon, looking pale under her usual Disney hoodie. "Can you help me check something?" she asked. She had her phone in her hand. Shaky. I tried filming last night. I used the time-lapse thing on my phone and left it on my shelf, just to see. We plugged it into my laptop and watched the 30-second clip. Most of it was static, a few faint shifts as she moved in her sleep. Nothing major. Then around 18 seconds in, there was a frame where her blanket was gone. Then back, then gone again. And for 2 frames, literally 2 out of hundreds, her body was sitting up, not moving, not looking around, just upright. Head tilted forward, arms limp at her sides, like she'd been dropped into a chair from above. "I don't remember that," she whispered. We scrolled back, frame by frame, and I shit you not, between one blink and the next, she was lying down again. Blanket restored, like someone pressed undo. She made me delete the file after that. Didn't even want to keep it on her phone. She started sleeping with the light on after that, and a knife under her pillow. "Not for self-defense," she said, just to feel like she was choosing something. Recording 4 file size, 2.4 GB. Duration, 5 hours, 17 minutes. Night 3. I filmed again. This time I turned the webcam around. Let it point toward me. Just me in bed. Eyes closed. Still. I wanted to know if I moved, if I got up, if I talked in my sleep. I hit play. For the first 20 minutes, nothing happened. Just me asleep, twitching once or twice. Then, at 3:33, the image warped. 1 frame only. Just long enough to see a second version of me sitting upright in the chair across the room, watching me. Next frame, it was gone. Bed still. Me asleep. No one in the chair. I paused it. Rewound. Frame by frame. There. Half lit. Barely visible. My face. My hoodie. Sitting still. Watching me. And my eyes were open. I didn't sleep much after seeing the footage. I kept telling myself I'd imagined it, that the lighting was playing tricks, that I was overtired, that maybe it wasn't me in the chair, just a shape that looked like me. A trick of the shadows, a glitch in the pixels, But the more I rewound that single frame, the more I knew. It was me. Or at least, something that wore my face. Monday afternoon, I showed it to Katie. She was the only one who didn't seem completely freaked out by all the weirdness so far. The only one still cracking jokes in the group chat. The only one still using the kitchen bin like it hadn't been silently mocking us for 2 weeks. I found her in the kitchen eating toast off a cutting board like a gremlin. Got a sec? I asked. Not if this is another "my desk moved 1 centimeter again" update. Just look at this. I passed her my laptop, hit pause on the frame. 3:33. There I was, lying in bed. And there, across the room, a second me, sitting perfectly still in the chair. Faint, but visible. 1 frame only. She squinted at it, then leaned back. "That's your reflection," she said. "There's no mirror there." "Then it's a smudge." "You think I glitched my webcam with a smudge?" She sighed, chewing slowly. "James, I get it. You're freaked out. We're all freaked out. But if you stare at enough frames of grainy footage at 3 a.m., you're gonna start seeing all kinds of shit. I bet if I looked hard enough, I'd see my Nan doing the Macarena behind your desk." I didn't laugh. "This isn't a joke, Kat." She softened a little, but only a little. "Look, even if that's you in the chair, so what? Sleepwalking? Weird subconscious thing. I once woke up holding a Wagamama's menu I didn't remember stealing. Brains are messy. I just stared at her. You think I sleepwalked across the room, sat in the chair, stared at myself, then vanished without? Triggering motion blur? You think there's another explanation?" I didn't answer. She handed the laptop back. "Maybe don't keep watching it. You're just feeding it." "Feeding what?" She didn't answer that either. Just scraped the crumbs off the board and left the room. Flat chat at 2:22. Message from Jen. "Can we all be in the kitchen tonight? Not optional. 7 p.m. This is getting fucking weird." Then Sally replied with a thumbs up and a thumbs up emoji, which somehow made it worse. By 7:05 p.m., we were all there. Katie on the counter, swinging her legs. Carrie curled into the corner chair like she was part of the furniture. Jen standing, pacing, fuming. Sally with her hands wrapped around a mug like it contained holy water. Me, quiet, watching, wondering if I should have filmed this too. "Okay," Jen said, dragging a hand through her hair. Cards on the table. No jokes, no ghost, banter, no TikTok theories. Bold of you to assume I had jokes left, Katie muttered. "Carrie," Jen said sharply, turning to her. "Where did your bedside table go?" Carrie blinked. "What? You said last night it was gone. Gone. Not moved. Gone. Like it never existed." Carrie pulled her sleeves down over her hands. "I thought it was a dream." "You still think it was a dream?" No answer. Jen turned to Sally next. "Tell them." Sally shifted in her seat. Eyes darted between all of us. I heard music last night. In my room. At like 4 a.m. "Was someone playing it?" Katie asked. "No, it wasn't coming from anywhere. It was just there. Like it was in the air. Not loud. Just this low, slow, really sad music." "You're sure you weren't dreaming?" Sally hesitated, then pulled something out of her pocket. It was her phone. On it, a voice memo. Timestamp. 4:03 a.m. She hit play. We listened in silence as faint, tinny audio filled the room. It was hard to describe, half lullaby, half funeral march, echoey, off-key, faint chimes and something like breathing underneath. "I didn't record that," she whispered. "I found it this morning." No one spoke. Then Katie broke the silence. "Look, this is all weird, yeah, but let's not start acting like we're in some student house remake of Paranormal Activity. Stuff moves. People forget things. Maybe we're stressed. Maybe it's mold. Maybe we're all just going a bit nuts." "You think mold made my calendar jump to 2031? I asked. "Yes," she said. "Time mold. It's like regular mold, but rude." Someone laughed. It sounded like a cough. Jen slammed her hand on the table. I woke up outside. That got everyone's attention. "What?" Carrie asked. Voice thin. "This morning, I woke up outside. Front steps, no shoes, no phone, just there. How the fuck? No idea. Door was locked. No one heard anything. And my pillow was still on my bed." She looked around, breathing fast, "and none of you even noticed I was gone." "We thought you were at the library," Katie said weakly. "I wasn't," Jen snapped. "I was sitting in the fucking cold watching the streetlights flicker like I was trapped in a screensaver." Everyone went quiet again, until Carrie, voice barely audible, said, "I think my room's getting smaller." "What?" "I measured the floor last week, just out of curiosity. It was 2.3 meters wide. Now it's 2.1. Maybe you measured wrong." "Maybe," she said. "But my bed frame doesn't fit like it used to. There's scratch marks where it scraped the wall. New ones." Jen finally looked at me. "James?" I met her eyes. Thought about showing them the footage again. Instead, I just said, "I don't think we're alone." After the meeting, things weirdly got easier. No one solved anything, obviously. We didn't exorcise the bin ghost or discover a haunting clause in our tenancy agreement. But just saying it out loud, all of it, made it feel less suffocating, less personal. Like whatever was happening, it wasn't just happening to me. We started sharing notes. Literally. We made a Google Doc. Jen color-coded every incident, green for minor weirdness, orange for concerning, red for existential horror. Carrie added timestamps. Sally tried to include temperature readings and moon phases for some reason. Katie drew a dick in the margins, and we left it there because it made us laugh. For the first time in weeks, I slept without my shoes on. That Friday, we had dinner together, like actual dinner. Everyone made a dish. Jen even lit a candle like it was date night. We sat on the floor and talked about anything but the flat. Course deadlines, gossip. What happened to that one guy from pre-drinks who disappeared halfway through first term? We laughed. Like, proper laughed. For about 3 hours, I felt normal. Later I went to my room, did the usual check the locks, align the desk how I wanted it, plug everything in. No camera tonight, no notes, no tests, just sleep, or that was the plan. Until I checked the footage from last week, the one I hadn't opened yet, recording 5, the night after Jen woke up outside. I hadn't touched it, because I already knew that night had been fucked, but curiosity got me. File name, REC 2024-10-09-2307.mp4. Duration, 6 hours, 14 minutes. Size 5.1 gigabytes. Time code 2307 to 0521. I pressed play. It started the same. Me getting into bed, lights off, stillness, 12:32 a.m. I sat up, not suddenly, not like I was startled awake, just rose, slowly, like I was pulled up by a string. I turned, swung my legs over the bed, stood. Then I walked out of frame. For the next 2 hours, the room stayed empty. At 03:33, the camera glitched. The screen flashed just once like static. When the image returned, I was back, sitting at the desk, facing the camera, awake, still, staring straight into the lens. And then I spoke. There was no sound, no audio at all, but my mouth moved, slowly, precisely, 5 words. I replayed it, lip read, frame by frame. "You're not watching this live." Then I smiled, a cold, dead smile, and leaned forward as if to get closer to the lens. Then the feed cut to black. I sat frozen, then hit replay. This time there was no glitch, no desk, no movement, no smile, just me, asleep in bed, perfectly still the whole time. I checked the file size. It had changed. 3.8 GB now, shorter runtime, different checksum, like it had been overwritten, but I remembered it. I knew what I'd seen. I still felt the eyes on me. I went back to the Google Doc, scrolled to the entry for that night. Green. Nothing happened. All good. I changed it to red. Then I deleted the entire spreadsheet. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't trust the footage. I don't trust the mirrors. I don't trust myself. I've deleted the files, reinstalled the software, tried to scrub my hard drive like I could erase whatever's gotten into it, or into me. But the videos keep coming back. Sometimes they're already waiting on my desktop when I wake up. Perfectly titled, perfectly cut, edited down to only the moments I don't remember. I don't remember writing this, but it's here. In the drafts folder of my Reddit account, dated a week ago, titled exactly what I would have named it. Everything spelled right, everything accurate, including this line I haven't typed yet. "You're not watching this live." Thank you for the comments. I tried logging out and deleting the draft, but it keeps restoring itself. Even after a full wipe, I'm going to leave my laptop in the kitchen tonight. If it follows me, then I guess I'll know. Story number 6. Moonlight shone through the dense, desolate forest, obscured by the fog just above my head. Sloshing through the mud, I nearly tripped with each step. My legs were an uncontrollable blur as my body flew through the darkness, my face stinging and red, blood dripping down it from the whips that were the low-hanging branches. The path was a narrow crack splitting the vast swath of trees. By that point, I had forgotten what I was running from, or perhaps I never knew. And if something was chasing me, I'd not have been able to hear it. The only sound echoing through my ears was the inescapable pounding of my heart, and the cold, cruel wind slapping my face. But that didn't stop my mad dash on the dark, twisting path. In my haste, I failed to notice the large log that ran perpendicular to the path. My shoe lodged itself in one of the log's rotted-out holes, my leg snagging on the log momentarily, bones cracking as my foot slipped from my shoe. I was still in the air, but quickly slammed into the ground. Groaning and yelping, I tumbled down, the path before hitting a tree, stopping me immediately. I lay motionless in the mud, groaning slightly, before rolling onto my back and spitting out the bloody mud in my mouth. Normally, I'd be absolutely disgusted by something so vile, but I hadn't the time for disgust. I awkwardly drew myself up once more, adrenaline coursing through my veins like a potent elixir. My ankle had been badly hurt, but I was still able to hobble weakly down the path. I knew I needed to escape, but I had no idea when the path would end. It could be miles before it connected to civilization. I wanted to yell for help, but something stopped me, something almost instinctual. I still wasn't sure what was happening or where I was, but somehow I knew to stay quiet. I hadn't gone back for my shoe, as it was 100 feet back, and I wasn't too keen on backtracking. Mud squelched between my toes with each sad limp I took. My ribs sent radiating pains through me with each breath. I sounded horrible, like some wheezing old man. With such a slow pace, the low-hanging limbs no longer whipped my face. I merely batted them out of my way weakly. Fog began thickening. Before it had obscured the trees above, but now I could only see a few feet ahead. Trees then began clacking together in the increasingly violent wind. The low-hanging branches seemed to close in on me. I thought it was an illusion, or the wind at first, but I soon realized it wasn't. The thin, sickly branches began grasping at my throat and head. I tore them from my head and throat, but they soon latched onto my arms. I felt so weak in that moment, as branches cruelly encompassed my body like some wretched constrictor. I struggled but couldn't break free. It seemed certain they'd overtake me. With all my might, I threw my arm forward, branches snapping with the motion. I used my freed arm to begin ripping other branches from my body. I wasn't sure how I was doing this, as the branches were thick enough to prohibit such an act, but they tore away with incredible ease. Their bar-like strength turning to that of thread seemed impossible, but my questioning soon grew dormant, as fear and panic sent me quickly hobbling away. I was so exhausted, so frightened and unsure. I couldn't run anymore. I collapsed to the ground, mud splashing me. I panted, trying to catch my breath, but I couldn't. With each gulp of air, I winced in pain. It was so cold, so terribly cold and cruel. Without warning, warmth began creeping in. The fluidness of the mud then changed to a hard surface. I hunched up from my fetal position, and a new landscape filled me with dread. I crouched in the middle of a large concrete slab, with what looked to be desert all around. The slab had strange symbols painted on it, each one distinct and robust. Chunks of it were missing, and it had many long cracks. My blood ran ice cold, despite the drastic change in temperature. It was hot and dry, with air like a statue. At that point, I had no idea what to do. Instinct no longer told me to run, and my mind hadn't the faintest clue either. If my landscape could change at any moment, what point was there in fleeing? That thought rang through my head for what seemed hours. I screamed, hoping someone would hear, but nothing came out. I knew I had screamed. I was sure I had, but I heard nothing. With no other options, I began walking out into the desert. The sand felt hot on my bare foot, clinging to the mud encasing it. I began to climb a tall sand dune. I crawled on all fours up the steep dune, almost collapsing. By the time I reached its top, I did just that. I collapsed, letting the sand warm my battered body. I wanted to fall asleep, but a shuffling nearby quickly dismissed that. I rose to my feet as quickly as my crippled body would permit. My head turned to the left to see a figure dressed in black approaching me. It wore a robe, with a hood concealing its face. It was just mere feet away when it lifted that hood. It was a man. He had a perfect face, with no wrinkles or inconsistencies. His eyes were blank white, containing no pupils, and he was completely bald. A single tattoo branded his forehead, looking eerily similar to those on the concrete slab. I was struck by fear by his abnormal appearance. I wanted to ask who he was, but he soon lunged at me. I pulled backwards, only managing to fall on my back and injure my ankle again. He leapt on me, clawing at my eyes and trying to strangle me. I kicked him off of me, causing him to fall to my side. Without skipping a beat, he quickly unsheathed the dagger and lunged at me. He slashed at me, the blade slicing through my arm. I screamed in agony, this time hearing it, and then rolled away from him. He quickly caught me, slashing at my chest multiple times. Pain shot through my whole body as I flailed about, screaming. He jumped on top of me and began to plunge, the blade down towards my head. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. I stopped fighting, as fear had frozen me still. It was so incredibly slow watching the blade plunge downwards, each second seeming like just a frame. The blade reflected the moonlight, glimmering as it descended. He made no noise or expression. In that moment, he hadn't groaned or contorted his face before, and he didn't now. Just before the blade was going to plunge into my head, my eyes burst into a new reflection. A ceiling, walls, a bed. I noticed these things, screaming, leaping out of the unknown bed. My frantic, near-death mind soon shifted, and I recognized it as my own room. Cuts burning like 1,000 lashes didn't permit my mind a much due ease. Had one shoe on, and one incredibly dirty foot with a broken ankle. Muddy sand coated my body like a thick coat. Getting out of bed, I grabbed my keys and raced towards the front door, my ankle not permitting swiftness. In my haste, I didn't bother closing the front door as I fled to my car. I needed to get to a hospital before my wounds bled too much. I jumped into the car, groaning in agony as I did, before pulling out of my driveway recklessly. The hospital was only 15 minutes away, but there were several times I thought I'd black out. Once I got there, I didn't even bother parking. I just rolled up near the entrance, got out, and began limping inside. Before I entered the door, some medical personnel grabbed me, helping me inside. Blood soaked my chest and arms, eliciting shrieks from people in the waiting room. The staff immediately put me on a stretcher and rolled me to a room just before I blacked out. When I woke up, a nurse began to inform me of my state and asked me what happened. The police were also there, as they needed to make a report. They asked what happened, and I told them someone attacked me. I knew I couldn't tell them it was in my dreams, so I said that all I remembered was someone attacking me. I lied, telling them I forgot where I was. I don't know if they believed me, but the nurse said it could be trauma-induced amnesia. After the nurse and police left me alone, I looked down on my right wrist in absolute horror. There was a tattoo on it, a tattoo just like the man from my dream had. It was a circle with short lines jutting out at irregular intervals from its perimeter. In the center were 3 smaller circles clustered perfectly together. I almost shrieked, but instead I fainted. I never mentioned the tattoo to the staff or police. I knew they'd put me in the psych section and claim I had a psychotic break, but I knew I hadn't gotten that tattoo, and I knew the wounds hadn't been inflicted anywhere other than that dream. That was 3 days ago. I've been released and sent home. I have a cast for my ankle, crutches, and many bandages covering my chest and arms. My face and neck also have some bandages covering the scrapes and cuts. I have barely gotten any sleep since this event, and any sleep I have gotten has been from short naps during the day. I won't sleep at night, though I'm not sure it can't just reach me during the day. I've begun doubting myself, but I know I woke up with these wounds, and I have the hospital records to prove the wounds are real. Not that I need records to prove their realness at this point. They're very much real, very painful, and they won't heal quickly. From the tattoo branding my wrist, I know it will return. Or maybe that it is a part of me. Maybe I am a part of it. Some vessel for an unknown, cruel force. Story number 8. My therapist keeps telling me I need to go outside more, to reconnect with the things I used to enjoy. As a kid, I practically lived in the woods climbing trees, making forts, running trails until the sun went down. But somewhere around high school, I lost that part of myself. These days I feel more disconnected than ever, trapped in my own head. She said nature could help, that walking among trees might quiet the noise inside me. So here I am, giving it a try. I live with my roommate, Mike, and luckily our place sits right by a massive forest. There's a trail that winds deep into it, and I figured it might be a good place to start these so-called therapy nature walks. Day 1. I've officially started exploring the woods behind my house. My therapist has been pushing me to spend more time outdoors to connect with nature. So I figured I'd start small with the forest that's practically in my backyard, basically. I also decided to blog about it. Supposedly, if this gets popular enough, I might even make a little money. Who knows? Anyway, today was more about easing into things. I didn't go far, just wandered enough to look around. I stumbled across some mushrooms. I think they're called jack-o'-lantern mushrooms, but honestly, I'm not an expert. I also spotted a deer and a fawn. Pretty sure it's the same pair I've seen wandering around the front yard recently. Of course, it wasn't all peaceful. The bugs were everywhere. I'll be real with you. I can't stand them. Their twitchy little legs, the clusters of eyes, the way they crawl over everything. Gross. Just gross. So yeah, that was pretty much it for today. Nothing too exciting, but it's a start. I'll be back out here tomorrow. Day 2 hello again. Right now, I'm on my way to a creek my older neighbor, Bob, told me about. Apparently it's just up the hill. A small one. Nothing dramatic. Supposedly, it's quiet, relaxing, and perfect for calming anxiety. Bob said he'd go there after he lost his daughter to clear his mind. Since that's the whole point of me being out here, I figured I'd check it out. I think I'm getting close. There are critters moving around near the waterline. Wait, there's even a deer in there? I didn't know deer could swim. Fun fact, I guess. Maybe this is turning into some kind of wildlife blog. Ha, okay, I see it now. There's a bush blocking the way, but I think I can... Yeah, I found a path through. All right, so I've made it to the creek. But that swimming deer I thought I saw, it wasn't swimming. It was just the head of a deer floating in the water. The creek isn't calm and sparkling like I imagined. The water is red, blood. That's, unsettling. Suddenly I'm hoping there aren't any bears around. I do not need that kind of stress. There's a trail leading away from here, so I think I'll follow that instead. Funny thing is, I've heard rumors about this very trail. People stopped using it after a girl went missing nearby, aka Bob's daughter. Last seen heading this way during a stormy night. Kind of her own fault, right? Wandering out in weather like that. Still, the thought of it makes the hairs on my arms stand up. Anyway, back to the trail. It winds through the forest hills and goes deep into the woods. I doubt I'll go that far today, but maybe tomorrow. Assuming tomorrow comes, of course. The idea of running into a bear keeps creeping into my mind. I know I shouldn't dwell on it, but hey, it's always a possibility. So far, all I've found are more mushrooms and strange plants I can't identify. If anything interesting pops up, I'll let you know. Otherwise, I'll sign off for now. Same time tomorrow? Huh. Yeah. Day 3. All right, day 3. This time I'm not alone. My roommate came along, and he brought his dog, Pickle. He's a St. Bernard Husky mix, full of energy, chasing after everything that moves. Honestly, that probably means no animal sightings today. I told my roommate about the deer head I found yesterday. His reaction was weirdly casual. He said he's never heard of a bear leaving just the head behind, so he figures it was probably hunters. Makes more sense than a picky bear, I guess. We made it farther along the trail than I did yesterday, beyond where I turned back. It's just endless forest. Trees, grass, mud, the usual. Miles and miles of it. But it feels less heavy having someone to talk to. Not just my own thoughts rattling around in my head. Oh, and in case you're wondering how I'm writing while hiking, it's speech to text. That's why the tone sometimes comes off weird. I usually clean it up before posting. Sometimes it even records conversations. Like this one between me and my roommate. The girl who went missing, she actually lived a house down from us. Her family still does. Me. Wait, really? I didn't know she was that close. Roommate. Yeah, she was super social, always exploring these woods. Came back with stories about what she found: abandoned buildings, strange trees, animal corpses, you name it. Once she got started, she wouldn't stop. I think her disappearance is tied to her adventures. Probably found something she wasn't supposed to. Me. Hold up. You mean there's stuff out here? More than just trees? Buildings? Cars? Man, I don't want to end up like her. But honestly, finding cool stuff could be fun and distracting. Roommate. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. Old cars, caves, even buildings. Not common, but they're out here. She was the only one who really knew where, though. So yeah, apparently this forest is hiding way more than I realized. Once I know the safer, familiar parts better, I might start exploring deeper. Not alone, though, and definitely not in storms. I'm not repeating her mistakes. Still, I wish I could have talked to her. She probably saw things no one else ever has. But let's be real. She's most likely dead. No body was ever found, but no one looked very hard either. Anyway, today took a turn. We'd made it maybe a fifth of the way along the trail when a man suddenly came running toward us. At first I thought he was just a jogger, but the closer he got, the stranger he seemed. He had a heavy southern accent, which was weird, since we don't even live in the South, and he kept muttering frantically, "You best get going. Back that way ain't no good. Ain't no good. Not at all. Get going. You ain't welcome there. Me neither, okay?" The words tumbled out like he was being chased. He wasn't dressed like a hiker either. Wore a work vest and jeans, moving fast, eyes darting everywhere. Maybe drugs. Maybe something else. Whatever it was, we weren't sticking around to find out. We turned back. I didn't ask him what he meant about not being welcome. And honestly, I don't think I want to know. Day 5. After yesterday's bizarre encounter, I decided to try a different part of the forest. This time, I brought Pickle with me again. He's huge part St. Bernard, part husky, and honestly, his size alone makes me feel safer. No one's messing with me while he's around. I chose a more local area today, one with joggers and hikers. There are even 3 small cabins scattered nearby. Feels more lived in, less remote. Still, I couldn't shake the memory of that man from yesterday. Who was he? Why was he running? The place was crowded. Practically the whole town seemed to be out. Controlling Pickle in a crowd is no easy task. He tugged, lunged, tried to jump on kids. After wrestling with him for a while, I decided to move farther out. Not too deep into the woods, but away from the bustle. Every spot I tried before was packed. One even had children playing, and Pickle nearly joined them. Total chaos. So here I am again, back on the forest trail, despite swearing I wouldn't. I'm not planning to go deep, just far enough for some quiet. And honestly, the walk's been peaceful. I was starting to relax when editing me here. The voice-to-text cut out at the worst moment. The last thing it picked up was me yelling, "Oh my God!" I dropped the lihash. "Pickle, Pickle, come back." He tugged hard enough to rip it right out of my hands. Before I could react, he was gone. I shouted his name, but he didn't come back. Panic sank in. My roommate is going to kill me if I don't find him. Now I have no choice. I have to go after him. Should I call my roommate for help and get screamed at? Or do I try to find Pickle alone? It's already late. I think I have to call him after the call. So here's what happened next. I called Mike. The second he met up with me, he let me have it. "What the hell, dude? You just let him run off? How could you let this happen? This is ridiculous. Which way did he go? You're so weak you can't even hold down a dog? He's out here in this massive forest and you just let him disappear? You thought taking him to the busiest part of the park, knowing damn well you can't control him, was a good idea? Do you realize how stupid that is? That's like my child out here, and he could get hurt." I stammered. "I'm so sorry, Mike. I didn't know he was that bad on a leash. I honestly thought I could handle him. I just wanted to bring him along, especially after what happened yesterday. You know." Mike cut me off immediately. "Yeah, yesterday. Whatever freaked that grown man out could be after my dog right now, thanks to you. You put him in this situation." Something in me snapped. I yelled back. Well, maybe your dog should be trained better. I chased after him, called his name, and he didn't even look back. That's not just on me. I didn't do this on purpose. He froze, then sighed. Fine. You didn't do it on purpose. But damn, man, you still let him run out here. I'm scared. I don't know what's in these woods. His voice softened. I told him, Pickle's a big dog. He'll probably be fine until we find him. That ended the argument. We walked the trail for hours, calling for Pickle. No response. We even contacted the local wildlife patrol, but they shrugged us off. Said they couldn't go past the 4th section of the trail. Totally useless. By now, it was completely dark. Recording. It's 8:43 p.m., and still no sign of Pickle. For the record, Pickle's a dumb name. But this is serious. He could be dead, for all I know. I split off from Mike, because he was sick of me narrating. But you never know what might happen better to document. Oh my God. I just heard yelping. It sounds like Pickle. I think it's him. Pickle. I'm running now. The sound's getting louder. He's nearby. Wait. It's coming from inside. A building. My flashlight's crap, but I can see enough to tell it's big. Covered in plants. No graffiti, though. Strange. It looks abandoned. Pickle's cries are echoing from inside. But then what the hell? A voice. A deep, female voice, distant, but clear. No, quiet. Please tell me this thing recorded that. I froze. My whole body wanted to run. I love dogs, but Pickle isn't worth dying for. Not over this. I'm not telling Mike what I just heard. He'd risk his life for that dog. Not me. I'll tell him in the morning. Hopefully by then, I'll figure out how to explain this without sounding insane. I'm leaving now. If I head downhill, I'll eventually hit the trail. Next morning, early, morning update. I told Mike I might have heard Pickle crying farther up the trail. I also mentioned the building, not the voice. Mike lit up immediately. Okay, great. You're showing me where you heard it. So now I'm limping along beside him. My legs ache from all the running yesterday, but I don't have a choice. We've made it about 2 sections into the trail. For context, I think there are 5 total. I told him the cries were closer to the 3rd section. He asked what else I saw, and I caved. I mentioned the voice. What do you mean, voice? He demanded. I tried to play it down. When I heard the cries, I also thought I heard someone. A faint voice outside the building. Not sure. It was dark. Mike exploded. And you're just now telling me this? What if someone took him? I stuttered. Well, maybe it's good there's a voice. Maybe it's just a squatter keeping him safe. Mike buried his face in his hands, shaking, like he was about to break down. Then he started screaming Pickle's name and ran off. Now I'm alone. Later that. Morning, Mike. Mike. No answer. He can't have gotten that far ahead. He's not a runner. I've been jogging, and I still can't find him. Wait. The building. It's here. The same one. I'm going in. Inside the building, okay. My phone died earlier, so this part is from memory. I shouted for Mike and Pickle, but got nothing. Then, a loud thud, followed by a muffled voice. Female, broken English. I didn't catch all of it, but it chilled me. I crept deeper, keeping low. The place is an abandoned lab or maybe a hospital. Rusted cages lined the walls. Some held skeletons, mostly animals, though a few were harder to identify. Broken bottles and glass littered the ground, labels faded, but still faintly scientific. Plants forced their way through cracked tiles. Bugs swarmed over everything. I found a cage with a nest built inside. And then I heard it. Pickle's yelp, faint but close. I followed the sound into a room that reeked so strongly it made me vomit. Piles of bones, rotting corpses, animal heads. Some were intact torsos, ripped open like something had fed on the hearts. And one corpse was human, a girl. Long strands of brown hair clung to the decomposing skull. Most of the body was gone, but there was enough left to see what she was. My stomach turned. The missing girl. It had to be her. Then I heard it again. The voice. And Pickle's whine, ducked behind a broken counter. That's when she walked in, an impossibly tall figure, hunched, but still towering, at least 8 feet. She was holding Pickle by the neck like a toy. She saw me. She stared. I thought I was going to die. Then she threw Pickle to the ground. He yelped, scrambled, and bolted toward me. I didn't think I just ran. Pickle ran with me. We sprinted until I crashed into someone. Mike. He grabbed me, saw the terror on my face, and without a word, we both ran. Ran until our lungs burned and our legs gave out. We collapsed on the grass, barely making it out of the forest. Pickle lay beside Mike, dirty, covered in spider webs, limping from an injured leg. When I caught my breath, I told Mike everything I saw, the corpse, the giant girl. He just stared at me like I'd lost my mind. But I know what I saw. The following days, we haven't gone back since. I haven't even stepped near the forest, but it's gnawing at me. I have to know if what I saw was real. Everyone I've told thinks I'm crazy, delusional, but I can't let it go. I'm going back today. Mike insists on coming, probably to prove I'm nuts. We're packing this time. Bear repellent, rope, first aid, water, ice packs, flashlights, even a few weapons. If the building is real, and if she is real, then this time I'll have proof. We left before sunrise. Backpacks heavy with gear rope, flashlights, knives, first aid, even a rusty hammer Mike insisted on bringing. Without Pickle trotting along, the silence between us felt sharper. The hike. The forest swallowed us whole. For 6 hours we walked, our boots crunching dirt and dead leaves, but no birds sang, no bugs buzzed. Not even the wind moved the branches. It was as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting. By the 5th hour, sweat glued my shirt to my back. Mike's breathing grew loud and ragged, his broad shoulders heaving under the straps of his pack. He didn't say a word, but the tight grip he kept on his flashlight told me everything. When the building came into view, my stomach sank. The first time I saw it, it looked like the forest was swallowing it, vines over the doorway, plants covering the walls. But now, the doorway was bare. The vines had been ripped down, shredded, like someone or something had torn them away to make the entrance clear. Mike muttered, "That's not how we left it." I didn't answer. My legs were shaking too hard. Inside the building, the air inside was damp, thick with mildew and something rotting. Every step echoed too loud on cracked tile floors. Rusted pipes hung from the ceiling like veins, and broken glass crunched under our boots. We passed empty cages, some with bent bars, others with locks that had been forced open. Old clipboards lay scattered, the papers yellow and water-stained. Words like subject and trial. Number 14 flashed in the beam of Mike's light. Neither of us spoke. Finally, we reached the room of bodies. The smell hit first. Sweet rot. My throat closed up. Bones littered the ground, animal skeletons mostly, but in the corner, the half-rotted remains of a human girl slumped against the wall. Mike's flashlight trembled as it lit her face, or what was left of it. His voice cracked. Melissa, it might be her. His eyes watered, his lips quivering, but he held the light steady. For the first time since I'd known him, Mike looked small. I lowered my head, unable to speak. That's when I felt it, a touch. Light fingers brushing my hair. Mike's scream shattered the silence. "What the hell is that?" I looked up. She was towering over me, bent forward to fit in the room. Skin stretched too tight over bone. Long, filthy hair tangled around her face. Fingers cracked and crooked, nails yellow and jagged. Her enormous eyes stared into mine, unblinking. She tugged at my hair like a child inspecting a toy. Her mouth opened, dry, broken words scraped out. Soft, her head tilted, eyes flicking between me and Mike. She reached toward him with her other hand, brushing his short hair with cracked nails. Mike froze, trembling, tears streaming silently down his face. The woman's lips moved again. People, not seen. People. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it in years. I tried to back away, but she yanked my hair tighter. Pain shot across my scalp, forcing me still. Her stomach growled, loud, deep. She whispered, "Hungry, always hungry." Her broken words. Mike raised his hands slowly, palms out. His voice shook. We're not here to hurt you. We're just looking." Her eyes widened. She repeated the word in a broken echo. Hurt me. She shook her head violently, hair whipping. Not bad, not monster, just hungry. Drool ran from her cracked lips. She leaned down closer, her breath hot, rancid, making me gag. "Eat?" she whispered, tilting her head. "Need to stay alive." Her mouth opened wider than it should, jagged teeth glistening in the light. She lowered toward me. The struggle Mike snapped out of his freeze. He lunged forward, yanking her hand off my head and swinging the hammer hard into her temple. The blow echoed through the room. She stumbled back, screeching, clutching her skull. "No, no," she wailed, voice breaking into static like cracks. Not bad, just need." But her need twisted. Her eyes rolled. Her jaw snapped wide, and she lunged at Mike. He blasted her with bear spray, the mist covering her face. She shrieked, stumbling back, claws raking across the wall. "Burns, hurts," she cried, her words broken, guttural. "Not fair, just hungry." Her voice cracked into sobs, twisted between pain and rage. Alone. So long. Alone. The escape. We didn't wait. Mike grabbed my arm, shouting, "Run!" We bolted down the hallway, flashlights shaking wildly, footsteps pounding. Behind us, her screeches echoed, her fists smashing into walls as she staggered after us. "Come back," she cried, her words echoing down the corridor. "Don't leave me, please. Need people." Her footsteps thundered closer. We burst through the entrance, crashing into branches and vines, running until my chest burned and my legs buckled. When we finally stopped, the building was swallowed by the forest behind us. The only sound was our gasping breaths. Mike collapsed to the ground, shaking his head. She wasn't even evil. Just, his voice broke. She just wanted to live. The ID card I spotted something in the dirt, half buried under leaves. I picked it up, an old ID badge. The photo was faded, but the face was hers, the same wide eyes, the same hair, before it became tangled and filthy. Name, 205-683-4. Division, genetic trial. Human adaptation project. My chest tightened. She wasn't born a monster. She was made one. A failed experiment abandoned in a crumbling lab, left to rot, left to starve. And now she lived here, feeding on anything unlucky enough to wander in. Her voice echoed in my head, even as I stared at the card. Not my fault. You've reached the end, but the shadows haven't left you. If this story unsettled you, prove you survived. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows, and leave a comment with the part that haunted you most. The darkness is always waiting, and so are we. Until next time, don't turn off the lights.